just sort of like kick it off, I mean, can you tell us a bit about yourselves? What part of town you call home? What sort of art do you practice? That kind of stuff.
Sure. I mean, I grew up in Calgary. I've lived here just about my whole life. I
Yeah.
had like a brief stint in Victoria, but um, I've always been a Northwesterner.
Seriously?
So
Me too.
yeah, my whole life. So
Yeah.
we're posh or something apparently. Um, yeah, I went to ACAD from 2008 to 2013. Graduated in drawing, and yeah, I guess the type of art that I did for the majority of my career, as it were,
Yeah.
is kind of very like illustrative looking street art. I was
Yeah.
super into like public art, street art, like intervention, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, we'll get to the this feels so real in the public art that you created for Arts Commons, but there's also some other large scale murals that you've done around town too, right?
Yeah, there's really only one that like that was it was the biggest mural I ever did down in Kensington. That's the only
Yeah.
like one that's surviving still that I like think of as like a long lasting piece of mine. I'm sure there's a couple others that are around, but I don't really remember.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
Well, with this feels so real. I mean, it obviously it captured my attention. It's sort of the thought that I see behind it at least sort of spurred me on to the video series and these conversations. But I'm curious, what were you thinking about when you created it?
Well, being that I hadn't really had an opportunity to do a public art project of that scale before, or with that potential scale anyway, um, I was trying to bring like the street art sort of mentality to it and say like, okay, how can I make like site specific work here that interacts with like the location at least on some level, and uh, the space where it is, there's like a brick relief in the wall, kind of.
Hmm.
And I was like, okay, well, I don't know why this was designed this way, but nobody's ever used it for anything. So I just have a frame here, basically,
Hmm.
and it just seems, I don't know, it seemed like a good opportunity to do something that was like at least more two dimensional than a lot of the other potential opportunities on that building. And I certainly work in like a more two dimensional. I don't know. That just is where I fall more comfortably.
Sure.
Um, and I think the first consideration that I made was like materially, because I was like, okay, the wall is brick. Like brick has all these connotations of like sort of, regarding like architecture and building materials and like fabrication of those things. So I was like, what contrasts with brick, right? And so obviously something naturally occurring and not man-made just made sense. So
Hmm.
grass, but I wasn't about to use grass because like I don't know what the logistics of like making a living wall are, but it sounds annoying.
Yeah.
I certainly wasn't getting paid enough to like figure all that out.
Yeah,
And
that's a bit much. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And also I needed something that was going to last a while, right? Because I wanted something that had a relatively long lifespan. So I think that just kind of struck me as like an easy, like smart, straightforward choice is like artificial grass. And then as for the words, I was doing a lot of paintings at the time where I would like take a canvas and do like a really even like monochrome on it, and then like layer this like thick acrylic paint and carve these little phrases or words out of that paint. So I took what I was doing with that and like put it towards these other materials.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It's a super playful work, right? And that's definitely the perception between reality and, well, perception, right? It's
Right.
definitely what caught me about it, and definitely sort of the irreverent, tongue-in-cheek kind of
Yeah.
nature of it, right? Like it plays with their sense of sort of what's real and what's not. And I mean, given the sort of strange world that we're living in right now, I feel like it's sort of perfect in the sense of sort of figuring out where we're to. And I'm curious, sort of applying that same sort of artist ability to kind of distill big ideas into something that's kind of understandable. And I'm curious. I'm curious to sort of hear what you think about the world that we're living in now, and maybe even sort of what you're hoping for in it.
Right. I mean, generally speaking, so like not specific to like the COVID situation,
Sure.
I think part of what makes that work successful to me is that it kind of does both of taking like a big thing and making it small and taking a small thing and making it big.
Yeah.
Because, like, yeah, that you can look at it as this really playful tongue-in-cheek thing that's just like a cute like visual pun, right? It's saying like this thing looks real but it's not real, like haha, right? But yeah, it does sort of dive into this. You can get into this conversation about like the object versus the image of the object, right? And then the work is also self-aware. It's pointing out that it's not real, right?
Yes.
As opposed to something that's masquerading as real. Um, and and then at the same time, it's actually just a very like I think it was pretty personal to me in a way. I had gotten pretty well. I don't know if good is the right word, but I had gotten used to trying to come up with like these little phrases that meant something to me on a personal level. And I think, you know, for me, I spend a lot of time like grappling with like the validity of like emotions and stuff. Like, you know, is love real? Are these feelings valid? Right. And so like, of course, probably I don't remember exactly if I had come up with it before or after the material considerations were made. But at any given time, I would have like a list of phrases and words and stuff that just kind of spoke to me on some level. And then like, as I started a new piece or a project, I would like consult these things and see which ones kind of like felt like potent somehow.
Yeah.
And that one just obviously like materially it worked perfectly. And then I was also just grappling with like a lot of emotional considerations at the time. So I think it took that personal thing and like blew it up, but it also took like this big concept of like, of, you know, concrete things versus like the representation of things and like distilled that down.
Yeah, I think what you're saying about sort of particularly around like, are these emotions real? Is what I'm
Mm.
feeling real? Again, kind of given where we're all at. I mean, that definitely speaks to me. Um,
Yeah.
it seems like so many things that were givens just weeks ago are not anymore.
Right.
Certainly in negative ways, without a doubt, but also in kind of not kind of in positive ways too. I mean, I sort of look around, and there's there's an opportunity to sort of see the world differently, right? Um,
Yeah. I mean, I think like like I said before when we first talked about it, like one little
yeah,
anecdote that was really interesting was that when I was installing all of those pieces, that Pokemon Go was like had just come out and was a huge
yeah,
thing. And there were a bunch of like Pokestops in that area. So I saw all these people walking around all day, like glued to their phone, playing this like augmented reality game, which is kind of like, you know, it was like adding this extra layer to the experience where I was taking something that was like, here is like something that's made of matter, and here's like a version of that that's like an artificial representation of a thing made of this kind of matter. And then that was like comparing like like all of matter, like the entire material world, to this thing that exists in like these invisible formats, like
yeah,
electronically and what have you. And so I think the thing that I've noticed that those things do is, you know, like with artificial grass or with like an augmented reality game, they kind of like obscure the lines between like what's, you know, what's a thing and what's an image of a thing or like a
yeah,
simulation of a thing.
yeah,
Um, and we take it for granted that like that's how life is. That's how technology and society like function together. But what's happening right now, I think, with like the isolation and the distancing and like the paranoia,
Mm-hmm.
is it's starting to like separate those things a little bit, because I've had a lot of conversations with people, or I've started conversations with people where, you know, we'll be like, yeah, I went outside and I noticed there's like a lot of people like out biking and walking and da 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 da. And I'm kind of like, yeah, but like, are there more people outside? Or are you just noticing more people outside because you're paying more attention to like the
Yeah.
things that are actually there, the people that are out there, and like the things they're doing?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it's more of just a perception thing. Like those people were always there. You're just like not glued to you're just not on autopilot so much.
Mm-hmm. I totally, yes, 100% yes. I mean, actually, on that, it's a beautiful sort of segue, because given that we're spending so much time online, given that we're sort of stuck in our homes for a lot of the time,
Mm.
there's a lot of noise either out on the internet or in sort of our own brains. And I'm curious to know, like, how are you spending your time? Where are you putting your focus? You watching anything? You reading anything? What should we pay attention to?
I mean, well, and this is the other side of that, right? Is like you can go out and you notice those things more, but then when you're like at home by yourself, you're like totally absorbed in like escapism.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and uh, well, let's see. I've been reading a little bit, but the book that I'm reading kind of sucks, so I don't really want to recommend it or anything.
Fair, fair,
Um,
fair.
I've been playing like some video games to pass the time. Oh, right. And I've been watching like a lot of, well, obviously some Netflix and movies, but more importantly, a lot of YouTube videos, and really like diving back into sort of like leftist politics and like philosophy and trans identity and other forms of queer identity and that kind of stuff has been like really on my radar lately. Yeah,
I'll get a little watching list from you later.
totally.
We can swap videos. Um,
Totally.
yeah, I mean, like I said, these are supposed to be super casual chats
Mhm.
and sort of short kind of snippets. So really,
Yeah,
that's it.
that's that's cool. I don't know how I managed to like get all the information I wanted to get out in that short amount of time, but I think I did it.
No, I'm really, I'm super impressed. Like, thank you. Like I said, thanks.
Mhm.
It's not a given that everybody's in a spot where they can sort of be thinking along these lines. And I want to
Yeah.
recognize that, like, not everybody is there, and that's all right. But I do find conversations like these with folks like you, definitely, at least just personally, they help me put things into context, and definitely look at the world through new eyes, and try to at least imagine a little bit of a better future. So thanks, Rob.
Yeah.
I super appreciate it.
No problem.